We are currently looking at the best investment opportunity in Central Florida. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about investment properties as a whole, how to identify the right properties, whether on market or off market. Yes, we're talking specifically about Central Florida, but this applies to any market that you may be considering. You want to look at a couple different factors and you want to run the numbers a certain kind of way. But first and foremost, we want to talk about the profile that you have and the goals that you have for your investment properties. As we look at this duplex, you'll see a couple of things. One, it's a highly functional home in the sense that it's only a 2-2, there's no garage, and it's under 1,200 square foot per side. What we found is that renters are looking at functionality above anything else. In particularly, what we find is that a lot of times, a lot of builders and investors, they tend to go for too high end of a property in which rents may be there, but they're not guaranteed. When you kind of go for that sweet spot in rent, that price point that you know you can get where it's affordable yet desirable, that's when you know you have a lot of confidence in your numbers, in your rental numbers, and you know you're going to have a very low vacancy while you can hit your actual rental rate. So this is a nice, well-designed home, granite countertops, LED lighting, luxury plank flooring throughout the flooring there, and stainless steel appliances. Again, a very highly functional home. This is a property that I currently have under contract. I'll be closing on it in April. We've sold several of these already. And when we did the research, this turned out to be the best investment opportunity. But I don't want to just start and end with the best in mind. I actually want to share with you kind of how we got here, how we determined this property to be the best one available. So let's actually dive into the mentality and what it takes to become a successful real estate investor. And I will start by just giving a quick little intro to who I am. My name is Alvin Tavares. I'm the founder and broker at Build to Rent, and we specialize in selling off-market new construction properties directly to the investor. Now, we're a licensed broker. Our district managers are licensed agents. We can do on-market deals, but obviously, like we're going to show you today, the off-market deals are so much better. So the kind of cheeky title for today's meeting is Don't Buy from the MLS. And again, if the deals made sense, I wouldn't have this title, but we're going to analyze and look through these options together. So we're going to start by just talking about, like, when you start your journey, what are the two most important questions you should ask yourself? Not just yourself, your wife, people in your inner circle. You should be looking at answering two important questions. The first is your goals. Really straightforward, but you want to get a lot of people involved, right? The people who you care most about. And you also want to start figuring out, how do I go about accomplishing them? And we're going to dive into that in a little bit. The other thing is, your goals are great, but then you got to look at what the market is offering you. And this is important because a lot of people, they have unrealistic expectations of what they can accomplish. And some people are just not stubborn enough to find a way forward no matter what. So part of this is figuring out, how stubborn are you? There are certain people that no matter what obstacle comes in the way, they find a way to overcome it. And you have to be very realistic with yourself, whether you're going to go through all that to go ahead and accomplish these goals. Let's talk about just your goals overall. One is that it has to be quantifiable. You got to put a number behind it. We got to know, like, whether this is a cash flow amount, whether it's a door account, whether it's an equity position. We got to know numerically, what does this mean? And you should be able to say it in one or two lines. It shouldn't be a elongated paragraph, or it shouldn't be some elaborate type of feeling that you have. The second part is the time frame. We got to know when. So if you're going to look to buy 20 properties in the next 5 years, well, you can run the numbers and say, okay, you got to buy 4 per year. But you can't not buy anything in year 1. You can't not buy anything in year 2, because then you have to, buy, a large number next couple of years, and you want to have that track record. So quantifying your goal, super important, but then giving it a timeline is also very critical. The third part with this is, analyzing what role you want to play when you're doing this. And this is important because you can say, hey, I want to flip 100 homes. And you ask, what role do you want to play? And you're like, well, I don't know. Like, are you the contractor, right? Are you the person actually there doing the work, doing the labor? Are you looking to outsource and build your team? What role do you play in your process? Same as if you're looking to become a long-term rental. Are you hustling for the deals? Are you buying below market value and rehabbing it? And then whatever role you play should be sustainable. So, for example, I'm a licensed broker. I don't manage my own properties, even though I could. Why? Because I don't want to manage them in the future. That I don't want to become a manager of my real estate, so I'm not going to start becoming a manager. So you want to figure out what role you want to play and then not do the things you don't want to do. So you got to outsource a few things. The fourth part, and this is a very important part, we're going to ask ourselves how do we feel once we accomplish the goal? And this is important because a lot of times your goals may be closer or further away, depending on the feeling you want to have. So if the feeling is of security, you want to feel secure. Well, a part of that may be having a balancing of, yes, you have a certain number of doors, but you have a certain equity position where you've bought down the mortgage rate enough that you're comfortable no matter what happens in the economy. Maybe you might say that the door count doesn't matter as much, but the ability to pay off your entire loan matters more. Some people want to feel like they want to showboat and brag about the numbers they have, but they want to have a very well diversified. They want to build a team. They want to make things a little bit more complicated. That's great, but you got to figure out, like, how do you feel? When you go on vacation, do you want to continue working while you're there? Some people do. Some people thrive on continuously vacation, continuously working. They do both. Some people don't want that burden on them. So when you accomplish your goals, how do you feel? And some people try to figure out that the best returns are on doing short-term rentals and find out short-term rentals are a whole bunch of work. They don't like it. Right? We're talking about the feeling, and that's a very critical part of when you set your goals. The other thing is we want to look at is you want to know the types of investment that you are willing to consider, and this is your investment class. And so some people are more prone to want to be in trailer parks. People be more in D-class communities. You want to figure out like what genre you want to be in. You also want to look at different types of investments. Quite frankly, you want to look at gold. You want to look at treasury bills. You want to look at the stock market. You want to look at different investment options. And you want to really understand the pros and cons. Oftentimes, people who don't move forward with real estate don't understand all the benefits real estate has to offer. So if you are comparing a stock going up 8 or 10%, right? S&P 500 going up 8 or 10% per year, you may look at a cash on cash at 7% and say, well, I can get better returns in the stock market. Little do they know that with stocks, the only thing that you buy is the right to eventually sell it, and that there is no cash flow. There is also no debt involved, right? So someone else isn't paying off the debt that you have in that property. When you actually do the numbers side by side, real estate wins, and it's not even close. But the reason why I can say that so confidently is because I understand the way that leverage works. I understand the way that debt pay down works. I understand the way appreciation works. I understand the tax benefits of real estate. So you want to be able to compare all of the options with regards to an investment class and figure out what's the best fit for you. And for a lot of people, it's a mixture of all of the above. You also want to look at your location. This is specifically whether you want to be local or out of state. It is very common to start your investment journey locally, close to where you currently live. You can kind of keep an eye on your deals. You can kind of source the deals. What people find is over time, they discover that they can make way better gains and profits being in other markets. And so a lot of our investors are from California, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, markets that are really bad to be in, bad from a legislative perspective, bad from just the price point, bad just in so many different ways. And so they're looking at markets that are more landlord friendly, that are maybe better on taxes. The numbers perform a lot better. Their price points are a lot lower. And so you want to look at the local market and say, hey, like, am I willing to deal with the trade-offs? And how do I overcome some of these trade-offs that maybe I don't want to give up, but quite frankly, you might have to. The other part of it is just the current market situation, the landscape of the market today, and figuring out what are the plays, what are the options, figuring out what you can do. And the fourth is really the approach to the market, whether you're going to work with a industry insider that has their own listings, that has their own opportunities, that work specifically with investors, or you're going to do more on-market deals and work with more generic agents who source the deals that everyone else has access to. These are all questions that you need to be asking as well as you continue to go down your investment journey. So as we look at the current market, again, what's happening in the market is going to inform us as to how do we play the market. And so one of the things that we look at, and this is looking at Florida specifically, but this is generally the trend across the country, is we're looking at how's appreciation going. And what you can see is basically up to about the first quarter of 2022, we were doing pretty well. We're appreciating. Ever since the second quarter of 2022, the market has been flat. And so when you run your numbers and you're trying to figure out what the play is, you got to keep in mind the market has been flat. So Florida's up 1.4% this year, which is better than losing money, but still not something to go crazy about. So the appreciation play, if you're looking to do a flip, looking to rehab a properties, or you're trying to do a ground up construction, you got to know the market's not going to help you with appreciation. And so, and it may be like this for a time period. None of us predict in the next 6 months that we're going to see a wild swing in appreciation. You can't bank on appreciation. You can't bank on rent growth. You have to run your numbers a lot more conservatively. And that's different than what you were able to do 3 years ago. So the other thing that we're seeing is just the interest rates are up, and they've been stubbornly up. And even though the Fed is doing their part in trying to reduce the rates, we're going to see this continue for a while. The interest rates are actually staying elevated. And so this is a prime rate of 6.6%. Traditionally, you're going to see investors get a rate at least a quarter or a full point above the homeowner prime rate. So they're going to be at, maybe 7.5%. That's tough. It's hard to make a deal work when you're at a 7.5% interest rate. And so when you look at some of the traditional options that are in front of you, you have fix and flip, which is difficult to source a good deal, as a lot of sellers' mentality is that the home is worth more than it actually is. And the market's not going to help you. We are in a flat appreciating market. And there's a lot of cost, a lot of risks that are associated with that. So you got to ask yourself whether or not you want to go down that journey. What we're seeing here is some of the potential costs that don't often get discussed. And so we have a fluctuating number around close to $60,000 of costs that aren't often disclosed when people discuss a fix and flip project. You also have ground up construction, in which the interest rates that we saw earlier are almost double when you're doing construction loan with a hard money loan. And most investors don't have enough experience to get a favorable investment new construction loan. So they're likely going to have to pay a hard money loan. So that's wildly expensive. Plus, because we're in a choppy market right now, you don't have a lot of confidence in the market you're going to be closing the deal in. So that's another challenge that investors have, is you could try to do ground up construction, but you don't know what market you're going to be closing this property in. And then you have just the buy and hold. This can include a rehab, but we're looking specifically here of properties that are over 10 years old. And when your property is over 10 years old, a couple of things occur. The biggest thing is that you have some major expenses that are around the corner. So your air conditioner could blow out. Air conditioners can be $8,000. And you got to ask yourself, if you replace an air conditioner, how much can you increase the rent? The answer is nothing. How much does your appraised value go up? The answer is zero. The age of the AC does not come up on the appraisal report. So the ROI on replacing some of these major components of the home is zero. And so the reason why we typically recommend going new construction is because you have the longest stretch of time before any major appliance is due for replacement. And so, these three strategies are very difficult to pull off and maybe ill-advised in today's market. And so as we look at the challenges, it's worth knowing that there's always been a challenge in the real estate market. If we go back in time, you might say that 2010 was the best time to buy real estate. Well, people were scared of a double dip recession. Also, banks weren't lending. So and people just weren't sure that housing was ever going to rebound. Those are all considerable challenges that existed when it was actually probably the best time to buy. Well, the same is true for last year, this year, and next year. So over the last couple of years, we saw really high interest rates become a problem. And so we've introduced things like having the builder buy down the rate. And so we have interest rates loans as low as 3.75%. So we're attacking that issue head on. We may be going to a time period of going to higher unemployment. And so we're focusing on markets that are very resilient, regardless of the economic changes. That means they have strong employment and they don't have a really high land cost. The land cost is basically made up in a deal. And so markets that fluctuate the most are the ones that have very expensive land costs because the land cost is made up. More stable markets have more lower land costs. So we like those markets that have strong employment data, but also aren't going to go through a large market swing. We also like housing that's deemed more affordable. So if you think about going through a correction, a lot of the people who were renting out those A-class properties are now going to go down a notch. So a recession can actually increase the demand for units because no matter what the economy is, people have to live somewhere. The difference is what they can afford. And so there are now going to be more people who are looking for the rental range that you are actually offering your properties at. And so we do predict that after we get through the end of next year, we're going to now go back to a severe housing shortage. And I'll go through some of the reasons why. And so now's a good time to stock up on inventory. You have a couple good buying opportunities now. Once it becomes obvious that it's a good time to buy an investment, now you're dealing with a lot more investors who are going to come back in the market. And there is a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines. We talk to people all the time who say, hey, when interest rates come down, that's when we'll buy. And we're like, hey, we're already at a 3.75. So there is going to be a lull period, possibly for the year of 2025. Thereafterwards, we're likely going to see a significant increase. And so I'm going to now demonstrate why I feel that way. So one is across the nation, we're seeing permits drop. So that top line that we see there is actually zero. So this is the year over year change of permit starts, and almost every market in the United States is dropping down. And again, the main reason is the cost of borrowing is high, which means construction loan is very high. We're also not in a wild euphoria moment right now. So we are seeing permits drop across the country, and we're also seeing it specifically in Florida. So we saw the peak around that same time period in second quarter of 2020 is the peak permitting. What we're going through now, the reason why rents and prices are flat is because we're now going through that inventory. That inventory that was started almost 2 years ago is being completed now, and we're working our way through that inventory. Once we get to a lower interest rate environment, and once we get to this point where a lot of that supply that entered the market gets absorbed, we're going to see prices and rents rebound pretty aggressively. And there isn't going to be a backlog of future inventory. It's going to be it. The builders have already stopped build, or they slowed down their building process. There isn't going to be a second wave of permits. And if we look at vacancies, this is a critical number. So what this is showing us is that we are currently absorbing the people moving to Florida. We're also absorbing the new supply. It is being absorbed. Again, not to the point where we can really jack up the rental rates, but it's being absorbed. And we're actually seeing vacancy go down. So as we see starts drop, and we're seeing the wave of inventory hitting the market cut off, the demand will continue. And that's when we're going to get to a severe shortage of both housing to buy, to live in, and also the rental supply of housing. And so if we look at the surge in housing, we are seeing that basically the household growth, and this is throughout the country, has gone up. And so this happened as a result of right after, or right during COVID for that matter. We've seen the millennial population decide to get married, finally have kids. Millennials have been about 10 years delayed versus their previous generations. And what we're seeing there is right after 2019, we saw a surge in what's called new household formation. And this is mostly from millennials moving out of their households, not being roommates with others, wanting their own independence, and actually starting their own families and households. So we can see right here, right in the middle, the demographics of 35 to 44 is where that big bump comes up. And it plays a role in a number of different ways. One, these are more housing needed, but also where these houses are located are also very important. The key is that they're not in the major cities. They're more in suburban settings. People are okay with commuting a little bit being outside of the office. The millennials have done the inner city stuff. They've gone to the concerts, they've gone to the clubs, they've gone to the restaurants. They've done that. Now they're more looking for more space, looking for higher quality of life. They have pets, they have kids, they're married, and they're looking to just have more peace of mind, which often includes being in more secondary markets. And so what we're seeing is there's been a huge surge in new household formation in this demographic, but it's not done yet. There's still a long lag is left for this demographic, and this is what's going to serve that wave as the inventory gets absorbed. So a lot of the things we're talking about today came from a conversation that I had from a former client. He bought a single family home in Cape Coral, Florida, which is great for appreciation. He now felt like, hey, appreciation may not be there. I want to change my investment strategy. I'm going to care a lot more about my cash flow. So the cash flow is going to be the most important. And he wanted to go from a single family rental to a duplex. He figured I can get more units per the mortgage. And so he also wanted to focus on Central Florida, where he thought there was going to be a lot of growth, a little bit more protection from hurricanes, and just in general, a lower insurance cost. So we went ahead and started that search. I'm looking for the best opportunity for him. And so as a licensed brokerage, we can pull up all the data that's on the MLS. We can look at all the options that are here. And what you'll find is that there's a pretty wide array. Now, mind you, in Florida, every MLS is a little bit separated from one another. So this doesn't cover the entire state. As a broker, I do have access to the entire state of Florida. But this is the largest MLS, which is Stellar, in the state of Florida. And what you find is that these are all duplexes that are available in Florida. And so what I actually did is I went ahead and I pulled all the duplexes in Florida into a single spreadsheet that we can go ahead and begin analyzing. So we're going to start by looking at all. And when we looked at all of them, they were over 482 duplexes currently for sale in Florida. And I looked at all the data. And from the conversation that we had earlier, we're like, okay, well, we don't want to get an old property. We're going to call an old property older than 30 years old. So older than 30, we don't want to deal with. And there are a couple of reasons why. One is when you talk about the insurance costs, the majority of your insurance costs are going to be the ones that have the highest premiums are going to be on your older homes that are kind of out of compliance, were built in a time period where the permitting was older, just to that time, um, and that they probably have a couple of claims on them. So one of the benefits of new construction is that there's no claim history on those investment properties. They're all brand new, new roofs, new air conditioning, new AC, all that stuff. So for the sake of argument, we went ahead and pulled everything as of the last 30 years. And so when we pulled that list, we reduced the number of homes available from 482 to 120. So now this is a list of 120. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to figure out, hey, like what markets are available, and particularly, do the numbers even look good? So we had to then sort them by rental information. So then I pulled the properties that have rental information where we have the actual data points. Now, mind you, as a duplex, theoretically, these should all be rented out and they should all have rental information, right? The owner knows the information. Likely the agent knows the information. There is likely a reason why they didn't want to put them on the MLS. And so from here, we went from a list of 120 and we reduced that list by to 133. I'm sorry, just 33. So it went down from 120 to just 33. These are all the duplexes in Florida that are under 30 years old and have the rental information here. So the quickest way to go ahead and reduce the number of, to just like lower the options is just by dividing the price by the rent. And that gives you, they call it the 1% rules, which you're aiming for, but they give you a percentage rule of figuring out like, hey, what are the better options? And so when I did that, I pulled one at the top, one at the bottom. And so this one has a price to rent ratio of 1% exactly. This property is $299,000 and it's a duplex. I also pulled one here at the top. This one's considerably more expensive. It's $775,000. And this one also hit the 1% rule. So in this market in Central Florida, I found two properties, two duplexes that hit the 1% rule. Let's go ahead and dive into them a little bit further. So here's where they are located. So the first one is in Lake Wales, Florida, and the second one is in Kissimmee. Now we see two diverging strategies. Now again, both of these are under 30 years old. These are all in Central Florida, and these are on-market deals. But we see that there's very different. One of them is very cheap when you're getting basically 150 per side. And the other one's very expensive where you're getting close to 350 per side. Let's start by analyzing the cheap one first. And this is the opportunity in Lake Wales. One of the things that we can tell right away is that these are more of a trailer park style. All right, these are not concrete block construction in any way. And we have a actual house, and it looks like we have a converted garage is what we're seeing here. So we would have to look into the codes, whether this is legal or there's a process that's involved. You would have to do an inspection. This looks to be wood frames. You got to check for, the damage with that. And just overall, it's not a impressive house. If at close to 30 years old, this house is only worth $300K, we can also tell that probably not going to appreciate much. Even in a rising housing market, it's not going to appreciate that much. So let's go ahead and look at the photos pretty quickly. And again, you could imagine you're not going to get the highest rent. You can imagine your repair costs are going to be a little bit higher. And so we have a pretty good design kitchen here. You can tell it was rehabbed nicely if someone knew what they were doing. But it's also the fact of who's your actual tenant going to be? How much does someone actually want to rent this space out for? It looks great. They did as good of a job as they could have possibly had done. But again, when you look at the ceiling, it's a cheaper home. And these types of flooring, you can tell by just looking at it from just years of experience. When you walk, you feel it, right? There's a bit of bounce to these kind of floors. It looks nice photograph wise. It probably makes a really good short term rental. Long term rental, not at all, right? You're just not going to get the rents needed for this one. But overall, not a bad house. And again, it does hit the 1% rule. The other thing is we don't have central air conditioning, so we do have an air conditioner per the room. But again, doesn't look terribly bad. And those the furniture was all staged apparently. So let's go ahead and drop this deal in, and let's calculate them. So we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to put the price exactly what it's listed for. Again, being on market, theoretically, it could negotiate, it could get a better deal, but that's where you're going to land. At just shy of $300,000, we're going to put 25% down. Buyer costs for closing costs going to be about 2.5% of the purchase price. And most importantly, we're going to put the interest rate at 7.6%. That's the market rate, right? So if you buy a house in today's market, you're going to be paying about 7.6% interest rate. And so we're going to plug in the rent that they had there on the MLS, which was $2,052 for both sides. And let's go ahead and plug in. Oh, and we're going to put 10% for property management fee. So what you find is you put the gross rent, you subtract for vacancy, you get $2,846. And then you add up all of the expenses subtracted by the income, and you're going to cash flow about $363. Not bad. You calculate principal reduction, you run your numbers, and you basically land at a 4.2% cash on cash. That's not a bad deal, right? It's not the worst deal in the world. It's actually, for an on-market MLS deal, this is good. You could probably call this video the best on-market deal in Central Florida. But 4.2 isn't bad. So that's moderately. Again, you're not going to get a lot of appreciation. Who knows how it's going to perform long run? Who knows how many items are due for replacement? It seemed to be a rehab property. Who knows how good of a job they've done there? We just don't know the answer to those questions. But we got a fairly decent option. Now let's go ahead and explore the second option, which was the more expensive property that we saw here. And now, these are two wildly different markets. They seem like they're next to each other, but Kissimmee and Lake Wales are very different. Kissimmee is up and coming. It is on the curve. It's on the path of prosperity. People are moving to specifically Kissimmee. It's a nice area. And so the house reflects that. It's a nice house, and it's a duplex. So there's a lot of benefits there. Lake Wales, just not on anyone's radar, not on anyone's trajectory. Definitely out of the way. So it's a market that's going to be overlooked by most investors. Kissimmee is not. And again, this is a nicer home. Let's go ahead and explore some of the pictures here. And so what we can see is, looks good. This seems to be the original photo from when it was constructed. 2 stories, a balcony on top. Again, very nice duplex. Great flooring, high ceilings, really decent chandeliers. And obviously, this seems to have been a short-term rental. So, again, the house looks great. It's a good theme. I don't know if they're looking to sell it for another short-term rental, but my prediction is that for this price point to work, it would have to continue to be a short-term rental, which is not what the client was looking for. So you'd have to run the numbers a little bit differently. And this does include a pool, which is very nice. Okay, so let's dive into the numbers, and we're going to plug the numbers from the MLS, exactly what they gave us. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to look to evaluate this deal. And so we're going to plug in their purchase price. We're going to put the 7.6% interest rate there. and we're gonna put their rental amount. The rental amount for this property is $7,800 per month, substantially higher. And again, it's a much nicer home. A couple of things to note though is interest rates is high, but and this is true for a lot of Central Florida and a lot of newer duplexes, is you're gonna have an HOA fee. And so when you run the numbers and then you include your HOA fee, this property has an HOA fee of $795 per month. So it changes your calculations quite a bit. So when you're dealing with Central Florida and you're thinking about, am I focused on the market or am I focused on the deal? So again, if we look at the options, right, the two that were listed here, they tell a very different story between a market and a deal. And your nicer home is going to be a really nice market. It's going to be highly desirable. It's on the curve. It's coming up. But when you include a $795 HOA fee, that's very difficult to try to absorb. So let's plug these numbers in. Again, it will cost you about $240,000 all in to acquire the property. After you run all your expenses, vacancy taxes, maintenance, property management, you're going to end up with a negative $3,564 per month on this deal. So automatically, deal doesn't make sense, right? It's not a good deal, not a good investment. That's pretty clear there. You're going to get some principal pay down, some appreciation. The tax benefits are going to be there, but just the negative cash flow, it's going to be way too much to absorb. And keep in mind, this home is about 10 years old. So a lot of the items that we were talking about are around the corner of becoming due. The air conditioner, the AC, whoever bought this property originally probably did it the right way. Well, you make as much cash flow without having to spend money on any major repair items. And then once they're around the corner, you just sell the property, likely 1031ing to a larger property at that point. So we've established a couple of things. One is you got to choose between the market or the deal. The market doesn't work. Only one that worked was one out of the two options that we saw here, penciled out. Besides that, doesn't. So that's us exploring the on-market option. And this is working with a real estate agent. Again, we're licensed brokerage and agent, so we can help you out here as well. But this is looking at working with an agent. They're going to show you the options that everyone else has access to. You're going to have a chance to negotiate on the deal, put offers in, do an inspection report. You're likely working with a home that's already been lived in, already been used in, and you're going to be getting the property at today's interest rate. And so if you wanted to go for an off-market deal, we would recommend, and we'll do this with you, is we would go to build-to-rent.com. That's build to rent with the number 2. And then when you type it in, you're going to be able to go to the website and click on the very first option is get full inventory list. Once you click on that, you're going to have to put in your information, and you're now going to be able to look at all of the off-market inventory deals that are available to our investors. Now, this includes deals in Florida, North Carolina. We actually have Alabama coming next week. And then we also have a large number of larger developments that are currently under construction. These are bigger builds. The smallest one we have is 18 units. The largest one that we have is over 188 units. So these are larger developments where the investor, the singular investor, would buy the entire build to rent community. So for the sake of this video, let's focus on Florida. And we can see here in Central Florida, we have a couple different options. And we have one duplex that stands out the most. And so we're going to dive into this opportunity right now. And so the benefit of this property is that it's scheduled to be completed between January and April of next year. We have 4 of them currently available. These are brand new construction homes. Never been lived in, no insurance claims, all the appliances are new, and you're going to go as long of a stretch as possible without having to budget or replace any major expense. Additionally, it's brand new. So you're going to get the highest amount of rent possible. A home also comes with a 210 warranty. We also include 2 years free property management, and probably the most impactful part as far as getting the numbers to work is we have the builder buy down the rates for you. So we have loan options as low as 3.75% interest rate. When you're buying a property at a 3.75% interest rate, your numbers change. Now we're talking about a completely different calculation, and we're going to go ahead and dive into it now. And it's worth noting that we have some properties that are already rented. The numbers we get come directly from the property management team. So these aren't my numbers. These are the rents that the property management team is already getting in the field, and that's the numbers we're using here. When you go into contract, your property management agreement, the rental rates are going to match the same numbers we're showing on this sheet. So when we run the numbers, we're going to put the purchase price at $420. These are a 2-2 duplex at $420, which is about midway between the two duplexes that we saw earlier. We're going to see the interest rate at 3.75%. And it's worth noting that the builder is going to pay a considerable amount, and then you are asked to also contribute, but it's up to you. So if you didn't want to contribute anything, you're likely going to land around a 4.9% interest rate in today's market. And again, these change constantly, but you can get as low as a 3.75, which is what most of our investors are doing. We take their rental rates, put all the numbers in, and then we include the 2 years free property management. And by contributing $130,000, this is your all-in expense. This is the amount that you should expect to put into the deal. You're going to find that after calculating all of the expenses, you're going to be cash flowing close to $740,000. So $740,000 is by far the biggest cash flow that we've seen today, comparing this off-market deal to the off-market deal. You're also going to get principal reduction, which means your tenant is paying down your mortgage for you. I always make the joke that every property you buy is 75% off, and it's 75% off because you're only paying 25%. Your tenants are paying the remaining 75% of the mortgage. All you have to do is wait 30 years and you pay just 25% for the property. So then you have the appreciation. Obviously, the first 10 to 15 years are going to have the highest room for appreciation, specifically if the neighborhood around it is also appreciating rapidly. And then we get the tax benefits, and then when you run the numbers, we're now at a point where we're at a 6.8% cash on cash. Just to recap, between the on-market deals that we saw today, is we saw a 4.2 cash on cash for the trailer park. For the higher end duplex, we saw a negative 17% cash on cash. And then for that's not the right one. And then for the build to rent duplex, and this is in Inverness, Florida, by the way, gets you a 6.8% cash on cash. So the numbers tell the story. In order to make a deal work in today's market, first and foremost, you have to have a reduced interest rate. The deals do not work at a 7.6%. They barely worked for that mobile home, and there's a lot of concern across that property. So for a deal to work, for something that you're proud of, you have to have a reduced interest rate. And again, we're offering interest rates as low as 3.75% interest rate. And so that's the way to make the deals work in today's market. And these were located specifically in Inverness, Florida. Now, Inverness, Florida is not a name brand city, right? It's not Kissimmee, it's not Orlando, it's not Miami, it's not Tampa, it's not even Cape Coral, right? But in today's market, you got to focus on the deal. The deal itself is what makes it the rational sense. If you focus on the market, you're going to end up in a position where you're not going to have cash flow, and you might have a tenant today, may not have them there next time, because you're going to have to go so high on the rental rate to try to get a tenant in there that you may get them one time, you may not get them a second time. So we definitely want to be more conservative in today's market, not assume rental rate increase, not assume a high amount of appreciation. And this just might be the case for the next year or so, that you want to focus on the cash flow. Then after that, you're going to see the appreciation happen across the board. So we always want to be as helpful as possible here at Build to Rent. Again, we are a licensed brokerage. We have licensed agents that would be more than happy to speak to you today. If you want to get our full inventory link, just go to build2rent.com and you can see our full inventory there. You can look at all of our videos and get a lot of information about our company. And then obviously you can schedule a consultation, about a half an hour. We'll have a chance to walk through all your options, get to know what you're looking to accomplish. And then ultimately we're going to share what we think may be the best approach for you. Also, our average district manager has over 17 years of real estate investment experience. So there's a lot of ways that we can help, whether you're looking to do a 1031 exchange, whether you're looking to do a cash out refi, whether you need a preferred insurance provider, property management team. This is what we do for a living. This is who we are. We are investors helping other investors. And so if you want to schedule an investor consultation, just go to build2rent.com. That's the quickest path to do so. And again, I'm Alvin Taveras. I'm happy to help. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.